Hello everyone, Kent.Bressler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, a podcast endorsed and sponsored by kidneysolutions.org. Hello, everyone. This is Kent.Bressler, and once again, we're going to do a podcast with Jason Hale this morning. But first, I want to tell you that I was able to get my last shot, my last Pfizer immunization, and I've had actually zero complications from it. I had no fever, no cough, no all the things that I'm seeing some people having. I had no temperature. The only thing is I got a sore arm. So, but that was gone within just a few hours, and just from using it. So I don't want you to be afraid of the consequences here. I think you should just get in there and get that shot. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Let's pray. Dearest Lord, the times are tough, but they've always been that way, and it's even tougher without you. So we ask that you bless us today, not only this podcast, but bless those that are traveling and bless those that are having trouble in this horrible weather that we're having. It comes along once in a while, and we know we can handle it. With faith in you, we ask that you bless us. And I ask also that you shed your light and your love on those folks that are waiting for a kidney, all those 100,000 plus that are on the waiting list. I think about them every day, and I think about the several that die every day just waiting. Lord, take that slack up. Let's get some more people transplanted, and help us when we do that. Ask all this and with praise to you. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, listen, Jason, it's great to have you this morning. You have a great story, and I really would like to jump right into it. You tell us a little bit about your kidney story and your transplant journey.
Good morning to you, Kent, and thank you for having me on. It started in 1980. I was 8 years old and fell ill one weekend, and it just progressively got worse. And eventually, after missing a couple days of third grade, I was taken into Greenville Hospital in Greenville, Texas, where they drew some blood, found out my poison levels, creatinine level was very high. They're like taken right across the street to the hospital. They'll be waiting for them. I was immediately admitted. I stayed about a week in the hospital, but at that time they're like, there's really not much we can do for him. So they transferred me to University of Texas Medical Center at Galveston, which for people who don't know is not really close to Greenville, Texas. So it was quite a journey, but at that time, that was the place to go. And it's also a teaching hospital. So, they had a lot of various avenues that they could try to see what they could do. So I was transferred down there, where I stayed for a couple of weeks, was diagnosed with kidney disease, glomerulonephritis, membranoplane proliferative to be specific, in which, the filters were just starting to slowly widen further and further and allow more poisons to get through. So after the full diagnosis, they were like, well, it looks like you've got about 10 years left on your kidney, estimated, give or take. And that's really about what it took. From 1980 until 1992, I tried to live the most regular life that I could, just knowing what's coming down the road, that dialysis was eventually in my future. And, I had a lot of time to try to do what I could in high school, try to touch every activity, try to join every club to get the most out of life, because not knowing as a teenager, I was like, I don't think that I want to live on a machine, and I didn't want to do dialysis and was, scared of it, didn't really know much about it. And in those, 12 years, dialysis did change a lot. Jokingly, I think when they first diagnosed me, dialysis may have been, a crank your own hand pump machine while you sit there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then in that time, the machines advanced and they ended up with the K2000s and, getting better with the equipment. So in 92, I eventually ended up falling ill and went into the hospital, and they're like, it's time, it's time to get on dialysis. So uh, they ended up, putting in my fistula, subclavian. I started dialysis and really didn't have a bad reaction to it. I was doing 3.5 hours at a time, and I stayed off work for about the first year, and then eventually ended up going back to work. And then I got a call on Christmas Eve of 1995, and they said, Santa has brought you a kidney. So please come on down. And, I was in the room and on the table pretty quickly and was transplanted by Christmas Eve night. And then I was pretty much out of it for about 3 days while they let me recover. And I ended up spending about 17 days in the hospital because I had a sleepy kidney that, and was just kind of giving me trouble from the beginning. So there was a lot of medication, a lot of jump starting it with stuff. At that time, what we now refer to as Prograph was, experimental, as, it just had a lot of numbers and letters, and that's what they gave you. And then eventually they released me and said, okay, it looks like your creatinine level is going to be about 4.7. I mean, we can't get it down any lower than that, but we will just continue the battle. And so that battle lasted 3.5 years. And in the summer of 99, they were like, you're probably going to have to go back on dialysis by the fall. Your levels are just raising. We've exhausted all the possibilities that we can do. So, excuse me, I went back on dialysis in October of 99. And there they said, the wait for second transplants is between 5 and 7 years. And I said, all right, well, I did it for 3.5 years the first time. I can do it, again this time. And I was, a little bit older, a little bit wiser. And the best thing to do is to execute patience. And 5 years turned into 10 years. And then there was a struggle with my panel of reactive antibodies, in which, besides having bad kidneys, I've just always had a very strong immune system. As a kid, I really never got sick a lot. And so my PRA levels were 100. And for those who don't know, that means pretty much 100% of all the kidneys that would pop up for me, I would reject against. So those numbers are, really high. Even 1% makes a huge difference when it comes to the PRA levels. So, after 12 years, I got a call and they said, no, it's not a good match. In 15 years, I got a call, and then somewhere in there, I thought they had lost my number. And then they called me once and they had one, but they called back 5 minutes later and said, the transplant surgeon decided that the kidney is too far and would be out of the body too long. So they're going to go to a shorter route with somebody that's a little bit closer to it. And I said, okay, well, hey, I'm just glad to know that I'm still out there and you have my number. And they said, well, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the background that you don't see. That in the early days, they used to call 3 people down, a primary person, a secondary, and a tertiary. And then they had to tell the 2 other people that the primary person is, good, and nothing has, that the kidney is for them. There's no reaction. So you 2 can go home. After you get a few of those calls and are sent home several times, it can be emotionally demoralizing, So they try to do as much work as they can before they call you to come down, so that they're not playing an emotional roller coaster with people. So it was between November of 2019 until May 11th of 2020, and I got a call again. and they said, we have another kidney for you, and this looks like it's the one your primary. And I said, okay. And then they said, but the person is still alive, but they're in the process of probably passing, so we'll keep you posted. And then the next day they said, you've been moved down to secondary.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, somebody who needs a pancreas and a kidney, and they actually move on the list above you. So it looks like you're now secondary. And I said, okay, well, this looks like it's going to be another time that this just isn't the one for me. And then they called back later on that evening, said, okay, you're back in the primary position. And it wasn't there wasn't going to be a match for the other person, or they were only going to be able to get one of the organs. And for pancreas and
Yeah, they
kidney,
want
they
to do
do
both.
them both.
Yeah.
And so by them just getting the kidney moved me back in front of them. So once again, there was this roller coaster race between me and somebody else to get this kidney. And you hope it's for you, but you want the best for somebody else, and you're just not sure what to think.
Yeah.
And so I moved back into the primary position. The next day they called and said, let's go with it. They
Let's
called
do
me
it.
at noon. I was there at 1, and I was on the table at 4:15 and out of there at 8:30. The same day they had me up and walking around, and that was on a Wednesday. And they said, we're probably going to send you home on a Saturday. And I was like, let's stay a little longer. There's people that are having babies that stay in the hospital a little bit longer, but it's just they have perfected this kidney thing, so
Yes.
well, from the 17 days that I spent in the hospital back in 95 to, you know, out of there. So I ended up staying 5 days, and, was sent home. And then once again, I had a sleepy kidney.
Really?
My creatinine level was about 9.9 when they sent me home. And so I was like, okay, here we go again. But somehow you just still try to keep a positive, attitude. And I was like, I've gotten this far. I've done it twice. This is the one. And, stayed vigilant. And then within about a week, it dropped to 6.6. And then within about 3 or 4 days, it dropped down to 4. And then it just fell to 1.5. And I've stayed steady between 1.3 and 1.4. So, yes, I was, tremendously overjoyed. And it's been, a wonderful experience. My recovery time was fairly short. I mean, the technology, the medicine, everything that they do for everybody now. And, the particular doctor that runs the transplant center in Dallas uh, is was the person that actually took care of me 25 years ago. He's been there a long time, and he's very familiar with me. He's familiar with, the innovations that they have out there. And so he has his routine down, and he's good. So it's been a blessing, and it's been great to re-enter life as a healthy person still with kidney disease, because as we know, the transplant is the treatment, it's not a cure.
Yes, right.
But as long as you follow your regimen and keep to stay to what the doctors say, you should be good. I've
I I'm amazed. I knew when I first talked to you that getting you back on would be an inspiration to people. How many years total? Think back real quick and just give me an estimate. Were you on dialysis before you got your second kidney?
almost 21 years.
21 years on dialysis before you got your second kidney. Now, I just have one burning question. I got several, but this one's burning. Did you at any point in time try to find a living donor?
I did. I actually had 10 different people test for me. But it's amazing, with me being highly in the medical, exposed to the medical industry since I was 8, I've always known things about me, like my blood type,
Sure.
and so on. But there's a lot of people walking around that are perfectly healthy and have never had any reason to know their blood type. So the majority of those people just didn't even know their blood type. And when you start the process to give somebody a transplant, they're all in. Let's get all those vials of blood from you and send them into the lab. And then the first one they test, okay, what's their blood type? And it wasn't compatible with mine. And so, all the other 16 tubes went in the trash and it was done at that point.
Yeah.
And you would think maybe, hey, just go into your doctor's office and try to find out what your blood type is, and then we can start from there. But a lot of people just, they don't know. So, I had a lot of people said, this is what I want to do. I want to do this for you. I had one person that was a match. Wasn't a match, but I said, well, they now have this new program called the sharing program. And, you can help try to save my life by giving a kidney, not necessarily to me, but to someone, and someone in return will, give one to me, and we can get it done that way. And they were like, I don't want to do that. I want to give my kidney to you.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so thank you for playing, and I respect your decision. And then you just move on, to
There's
even
not,
be considered by somebody is, a blessing. So I
yeah.
have to
Well,
look at it like that.
I looked at that. After talking to you, and I thought, gee whiz, it would have been nice to have been able to find a living donor, but it doesn't always work that way. You do have to, you have to search, but the biggest thing is you have to maintain an attitude like you've had. If we were doing this in video, people could see how well you look, how good you look, but you look that way because you take care of yourself, and you've done what you're supposed to do, but you've got perseverance, you've got grit, and I'm real happy to have got to meet you. It's amazing what you've gone through. Let me ask you a couple other questions. When you were were really sick the first time, do you know what they diagnosed you with? Did they do a biopsy? You were too young, really, at 8 to have a biopsy. Did you ever get
Correct.
biopsied?
Yeah, I was biopsied after the fact, about yearly. Once a year, I'd come in and they would, come in, and that time just the technology is a little bit different. I've had some botched biopsies.
Oh yeah,
They used to just localize the area, stick that needle in your back, and then they do the little poke into your kidney and take a snip of it out.
yeah,
And I've had it where they went to puncture the kidney and they didn't press the needle hard enough. And all it did was push my kidney into my stomach. So while you're laying on your stomach on an operating table, it's like somebody just punches you in the stomach.
yeah.
And they're like, oops, okay, let's try again. And you feel that guy with the red nose on the operation game. And I'm like, okay, let's get this together. But it's a learning process. I tell people all the time, medical science is a science, but it's not an exact science.
No, no.
Just
And
as we're all dealing with Corona, everybody now is really, just trying different things, and we'll see, what happens. So a lot of that stuff then in the early 80s was, okay, I think we'll do this. So I was biopsied, but when I was originally diagnosed, they just had an outlook. They said, let's put them on 800 milligrams of steroids. So I was 8 years old, just roid raging, in third grade, manhandling all the kids around me. I blew up, gained a lot of weight. And then all of those steroids, I mean, it was probably 200 milligram pills that were huge, those horse pills. And as a kid, I couldn't swallow that. So my mom would quarter them. So you take 4 pills and then quarter them. Now it's 16 pills.
right.
And I could only swallow 1 pill at a time. So by the time I got through with 16, I was waterlogged.
Yep.
And it was like a 30-minute ordeal process of just to get those pills down. And then they had a lot of side effects. My fingernails got really deformed and ended up falling out, and, other various horror stories. But at that point, it was like, hey, your fingernails might look messed up, but you're alive, and we're trying to, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Prednisone, the steroid you're talking about. Are you still on that?
Yeah, I'm on 5 milligrams of
Yeah.
steroids,
I,
compared to 800.
I went through the same process. I have FSGS, and they tried to do the steroid bomb with me for about 6 months, and I was up around 200 milligrams 3 times a day. So I was in the same, that's the treatment process back then. All right. So
Mhm.
historically, you talk about getting to the transplant phase where you were on another drug that was coming through the mill, Prograf. I was on Sandamune. I've been on Sandamune the whole time. So
Wow.
things have made a difference. And you know, you may be minimal change, but you did had kidney damage from sclerosis, and it was a protein thing. You spilled a lot of protein in your urine. So that's what
Yes.
we go back and look at. We say, you know what? If you got protein in your urine, I shouldn't have it. Get it figured out. You know, don't let them tell you, well, you know, let's watch this. You have protein in your urine. That's a first sign that there is some problems, that you may have kidney disease, and it should be checked out. Now, you don't want to wait on it.
And it really helps with yearly updates. People just getting their checkups. You never know what they're going to discover, and early detection is a key on any kind of disorder. And so I got diagnosed with being hyperactive when I was about 5 because I was just running around all over the place. A year later, they're like, well, you know what? We made a mistake. It's hypertension. Your son has high blood pressure and he's 7. And you're like,
Yep.
okay. So then I started on a little blood pressure pill. Then when I was 8, they're like, well, the high blood pressure, the arteries and vein, the to and from on his kidneys are being destroyed because the pressure pushing into his kidneys is too strong. And we're like, well, we've had him on medicine. Yeah, it is. It's controlling it, but it's still, killing
Damaging
his
it.
kidneys.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the process. So you think about that. You're 8 years old, right? Think about all the 8-year olds out there or less that are running around with kidney disease, don't even know it. This starts
Yeah,
real
exactly.
early. What you had and what I had, I know that if I could go back, I would probably have had protein in my urine in grade school. But
Yes.
so consequently, these progressive diseases, you don't want to wait. You want to be, like you said, aggressive with treatment, whatever the treatment is, but at least you need to observe it very closely. You can't let it go because the damage is being done regardless of how well you feel. Your blood pressure goes up, your kidneys regulate blood pressure. So if they're not working correct, your blood pressure is going to go up, and it has to be checked and monitored and maintained at a lower level, or the damage continues, and it continues at an accelerated pace. So
With my second transplant, prior to it, I was on 6 blood pressure medicines. After
really,
the transplant, I'm on one and one as needed.
what is how many times a day do you take, or weeks? What's your routine for taking your blood pressure?
I take my blood pressure in the morning. I have an app on my phone. It's just part of the Samsung phone called Samsung Health, and I document it in there. Yesterday morning it was 128 over 88. So, that's, well within the range. And
And
that's
you're,
within
yeah, how old are you, Jason?
148.
48. Okay. So yeah, blood pressure is going to creep up as you age anyway. So you still have to really monitor it, and doing it once a day. I admire you. If I get mine once a week, I'm lucky. I can do it. I just don't. But that's
It's
that.
there. It's right next to my pill organizer.
Yep.
I'm there. I document it. And since about 5 years ago, I started keeping track of everything that I eat and just putting in the calories and such because, during the dialysis phase of that part of my life, they're like, okay, 2,000 calories is what a normal person your age needs to maintain weight. If you're not getting 2,000 calories, you're going to drop weight. If you're getting 2,500 calories, you're going to gain weight.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, well, it's easy to draw a portrait of me. It's just a little stick figure with a big head. So I was like, all right, I want to gain some weight. So now my goal is between 2,500 and 3,000 calories a day. But my diet is not the greatest, just in the fact that a lot of those calories are empty.
Yeah.
I'm not diabetic, and I still have a serious sweet tooth. But after the transplant this time, uh, of course, it was a cadaver kidney, but I really thought a lot about salads instead of candy bars. And chocolate, really a lot of my tastes and curiosities changed in my thinking of what I was putting into my body. And I really wasn't conscious of that before. Now, I'm not, I still eat frozen foods and fast foods and stuff like that, but I'm trying to eat better, especially as I get older.
I believe that you're a moderator. You do everything in moderation. That has to be your bailiwick, right? You do that in everything in moderation. You don't keep away from things, but you do things in moderation. That's been
Yeah,
my
I've
penchant.
always learned that the answer is not no, it's low.
Right.
And so
Great. Great.
because I got blood pressure problems so young, my mom just raised me without salt. There was salt on the table, but she just didn't cook with it. And then my parents' meals, they just put salt on their food, and then I ate it without salt. So it ended up just being two things. McDonald's heavily salts their fries,
Oh yeah.
and didn't really know what it was because I didn't know what salt was, but had a French fry one day without salt, and I was like, ugh. And they were like, well, it's salt on there. And I was like, this is delicious. Salt is great, and where has it been? But at that point, I had been raised without it and didn't really miss what I didn't have. So I, to this day, still don't use salt, but on a couple of things, eggs or potatoes,
Yeah.
whether it be a baked potato, a mashed potato, or French fries, there's salt there. It's around the house, but I'm just not heavy handed with it or really just don't use it at all. So, it's just one of those things that got ingrained in we um, as a young person, along with a lot of other medical stuff, just getting this so young. Think
So
for people that,
your dad is also a chef.
mhm,
Yeah,
yes.
and I'm sure, and when we had him on, he talked at length about diet being so important. So if that's the case, where are you with your exercise? What kind of exercise regime do you have?
Right now, it's twice a week. When I'm not at the gym, I'm thinking about going to the gym just because, you get in there and you get addicted to those endorphins and how you feel. And when you're working out, it hurts, but the next day you feel so much better. And at this point in my life, I'm just happy to be able to do it. But I still have some restriction. I'm not a little limitations that I just put on myself. I had a fistula put in August 17th, 1992. And back then they said that they were built to last between 6 and 8 years. And mine is still going. I've never, ever had a problem with it in 28 and a half years. It's never clotted, never anything. So, it's got a couple aneurysms in it, and it's not mostly cosmetically pleasing to look at. But I just started wearing a wristband over my arm. But you've got to be careful about, when you are
Constriction.
lifting weights
Yeah,
to make sure, I don't want to be out of my transplant now and then pop that thing or something.
exactly.
So I can't just go in and lift heavy weights like I want to. And I'm still trying to find a place for it because I was on dialysis for such a long time, 3 times a week. After the transplant, that became an empty space on my schedule that I almost didn't know what to do with. And I'm 9 months out, and I'm still, on days of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where my dialysis used to be, I find myself at 3:30 starting to try to wrap up the day to get ready to drive to the clinic at 4 and be on the machine by 4:30 or 5. And I have that extra time now. And now that I have it, I was like, you know what? Well, we took out dialysis. Let's just drop the gym into that slot and keep on
Go
with,
there. Great
there was
idea.
never, they said if you're too sick to go to dialysis, you need to go to the hospital. So, and it was something that I had to do. And I wanted to do that, but I'm also wanting to live life in this Corona time. So when I get off work, I want to travel. I want to see people. I want to talk on the phone, all kinds of stuff. And sometimes the gym falls from 3 times a week to 2 times a week. And
Sure.
there was a period where I didn't go a week, so I'm trying to stay consistent in it. And, it's a work in progress, but at the same time, I'm still trying to do other things also. I don't want to become a gym head or a
No.
meathead or anything like that, but I just, want to stay healthy. And as for my dad being a chef, personality comes into play there where his taste buds are wider than mine, in which he likes
Yeah.
to experience all kinds of stuff. And unfortunately, I'm a kidney patient with a picky palate.
Yeah.
And so I'm, scared to try new things. And I'm a creature of habit. I eat the same stuff that I've been eating for years because I know that I like it.
Yeah.
And so
Right. You're like me. Yep.
if somebody puts something in front of my face that I haven't tried before, a lot of people can just put it in their mouth and then swallow it and go, that was disgusting.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just gonna go ahead and pass on it and just not even try it. But you miss opportunities when you do that because you could be missing out on something great.
Right.
And so I've tried to be more open-minded, especially now being at 48. And I think that would happen with anybody, uh, kidney or non-kidney patient related, that when you get older, you expand your mind a little bit.
Yeah. I have always said that if it doesn't smell right, it can't taste right. You know what I mean? If it's offensive to me, it ain't going in my mouth. So consequently, if I walk in and I smell broccoli, ain't happening. Never has, never will, and won't. I won't do it. So that's an example of how different people are. But I still go back to that moderation issue. If you keep yourself from a given thing, you'll want to crave it even more. So it's better to have a
Mhm.
small part of that than it is to eat a little piece of cake versus the whole cake. All right. So that's
Yes.
the moderation view. So we've gone over we've gone over exercise and diet. What about your medicine? What kind of a medication load are you on right now?
If you got me on your standard, three of the tacrolimus, the prednisone, and the Prograf
Right.
for the transplant stuff. And then, regulating a few things of magnesium, sodium bicarbonate. I've got a low pressure omeprazole, which is my main blood pressure med, which is also a beta blocker. And then I've got Precardia or nipedipine, which is
Which is an
my
ACE.
as needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is my as needed med.
Yeah. So
And then in there,
how do you regulate how do you define as needed? I know you take your blood pressure every day. What's your level? At what point do you take that extra dose of medication?
top number, anything over 135, go ahead and pop a nipedipine.
Procardia. Okay.
Yeah, Precardia.
Yeah. So
Exactly. And for the most time, I don't have to.
the teaching point here is not the fact that you do that. It's the fact that you're justified in it because your doctor knows that. That's what you've been put on. That's not for everybody that's listening. You don't do that with your medicines. You do exactly what your doctor says with your medicines and chart your course with his or her consulting with you and give you some options there. You just don't take a medicine when you want to. It's got to be regulated because you lose the effect of the medication if it's not taken consistently.
Yeah,
So
exactly. With my working out, a friend of mine who works out said he takes glucosamine 30 minutes before he works out and after he works out. It really helps with the pain and with the joints. So he's like, you should try it. And I said, okay. I had to wait 2 weeks because I have to run that by my doctor. And
absolutely.
I had a televisit yesterday with the nurse practitioner, and she was, do you have any questions? I said, yes, this glucosamine. I would like to start taking it, but I need to run it. Will it have interactions with my other medicine? You
Exactly.
know, and they said, she checked on it and got back to me and said, you're good. You can take it. Because unfortunately, about 4 months ago, they took my Bactrim, which you have to take for a year after your transplant. They put it on hold because it was raising my potassium. So that made me transfer to getting a breathing treatment. So the breathing treatments are just once a month. You go in and get your nebulizer done, and then you leave. And it takes about 45 minutes to do. But it was $180 a pop. So after getting about 4 breathing treatments, I said, hey, can we test my labs again and see if I can go back on taking Bactrim? They put me back on Bactrim 2 weeks, and then they tested my labs, and my potassium jumped from 4.1 up to 5.9. And so they said, okay, you're going to have to get off the Bactrim, stop taking it. We're going to have to get you back into the breathing treatments, which whatever my doctor says, I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it's, $180 versus being healthy. I was just trying to see if I could do it, and
Sure.
it didn't work.
That's the
And I
option you
only
have as a patient.
and I only have 3 more months before that ends. So I've got a breathing treatment for February, March, and April, and then I'm done. So, one thing that waiting all those years for a kidney did was teach me patience.
Absolutely.
So I'm like 3
Absolutely.
months, everything is put on the 20-year marker. 3 months, of breathing treatments compared to waiting for 20 years. I can do this standing on my head. No problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This breathing treatment, is aerosol treatment, is it by machine or is it by aerosol inhaler?
Yeah, it's an aerosol inhaler that you just hold up in front of your mouth as if you were getting albuterol or atropine.
Why, this is just me asking, why could you not do that at home? Why couldn't you just pick up the med and do it at home?
Uh, just I think probably just because of I know people who have asthma and get those breathing treatments at
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
and it's another piece of equipment that you pick up or whatever. So,
Uh,
really, I'd honestly, until you mentioned it right now, I had never really thought about it.
Oh, just check it out. The expense is the other part of that. I'm just saying
Mhm.
that's an option for you as a patient. Is it possible? Is it worthwhile looking into? I think it is. And then you can make a decision if it's worth it to you to do it all. It would save you time and it would
Yeah, most definitely
probably let
because
more inexpensive. If it could be more inexpensive if you look at it.
because uh, Baylor, where I have to go have it done, is about 45, 50 minutes from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the middle of a workday, I'm not even sure because I've got to call them to schedule another treatment. And I just recently went back to work. So I've got to call them Monday, Tuesday, weather permitting, and see if they even do it in the evenings and most people don't. And weekends is usually not an option, but I'll just have to see.
Well, Baylor's not the only one that does it. There's every hospital in the world does them. Maybe a closer hospital to start with to look
Yeah,
into that.
there is
And
a Baylor that's close to me in Plano. So
well, what they can, I'm sure they're doing it there. So you might want to try that. Just I'm thinking of saving
true.
money and saving time and saving effort. That 45 or hour and a half drive back and forth, you can make that better for yourself and your life and your family. That's just look into it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, being a kidney patient,
Excuse me.
we are being a kidney patient, we are presented with so much information all the
Absolutely.
time. Sometimes the most remedial or simple things just kind of slip through
Yep.
because we overthink a lot of stuff. I mean, when I wake up in the morning and my finger hurts, I'm like, is this a side effect of something? What happened? I see scratches on me or bruises sometimes, and I don't know how they got there. And I'm like, how did this happen? Did I bang myself? Did I bump myself? Did something scratch me in the middle of the night? What's happened? I mean, you're taught to question everything. It's just like with your car. When you have a car, you know every sound that it makes. We're very familiar with our bodies, and we know when our body is telling us something is wrong. And so, we over examine stuff. And so when it comes to why don't you just drive to the clinic around the corner from your house and get a breathing treatment? And then you go, why didn't I think of that?
No, and listen, and I've been there. I've done some really drive back and forth from San Antonio, Texas, 60 miles one way, 120 round trip, and I'm thinking I got to figure something else out because this is not compatible with working, and it's not so you make an adjustment. But it took me a year and a half to figure it out. So
Yeah, necessity brings a lot of innovation a lot of
yeah,
times. And so you just have to really think about it. But, I'm very strong on whatever my doctor says, I follow
absolutely.
it.
That was the next thing I was going to say. That's the thing I want people to take away. Don't be your own doctor. Be your own advocate. Get your options, but the doctor's the one that gives you the options. And that
Yeah,
can't we can't say that enough. You're a doctor and you are together at the hip. They say something, you have the right to refuse it, but if it's going to be in their ballpark, if they're doing that, it's best for you to do it. There's no use going if you're not going to follow their direction.
yeah, I don't have any degrees. There's no letters behind my name. I drew one with a Crayola once and put it on the wall, but besides that, they're the experts. And we
Absolutely.
become the mini experts of our own bodies after
Exactly.
years of doing this. And if you really understand and study what's going on with yourself, it'll help you better in your own healthcare, regimen. But they're there for guidance and suggestions, and you should listen to what they say because they have the knowledge. But yes, I did have to learn at the same time that, it's not blindly followed. You can ask
No.
questions and say, is this the best route for me? Even when it comes to dialysis, they're like, we're going to put a fistula in you. Okay. Well, what about a graft? What
Right.
about doing peritoneal? What
Right.
about doing home? There are other things, but it's just really the knowledge. A lot of people don't know. And this is what the doctor suggests. This is what you do, but it's up to you to try to go out and do the research. They can't put everything about kidney patients in a pamphlet, you
No.
know.
No.
That if they did that, it's called a book. It's no longer a pamphlet.
Yeah. And it takes a long time to read a book, and it takes years that sometimes to get to where you're comfortable with what you're doing, and then it changes. What you worry about is the person who is just will think about something and thought, well, whatever he said, I don't believe it. You got to buy into it. So you have to have options. One thing suggested to you is not good unless you think it is. But you have to be given options. There's no reason not to have options. You can get an option for everything. Like you said, if I do this, is there another way for me to do it that's less expensive and easier for me to do? Because some people just won't do it because it's difficult. All right, they're not going to do it.
That's
They'll
true.
say they will, but they won't.
Yeah, and the financial part of it can hold people back.
Sure.
It's not that I didn't want to do the breathing treatments. I just said, is there another way of a $3 pill versus that $180
Absolutely.
copay
That's
on my
right.
treatment? And my doctor allowed me to do it and said, okay, we'll try it for a couple months, but if your labs come back up, we're going to have to go this way. And they went back up, but he gave me the opportunity to do it. And
Sure.
that's all that I could be thankful for, because they will work with you.
That's right. That's the one. That's the one you want to keep. There are some that you have to fire, but let me tell you what. It's great to hear somebody say that. Most people think, well, I go to the doctor and you're just there for 15 minutes and then you're gone. But he is or she is the one with the knowledge base. They are the ones that can offer you the options that you need to make a good, firm decision. And that's the takeaway on the whole thing.
Kent, and that goes both ways. There are some that you have to fire, but I actually, as a teenager, was fired as a patient.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Tell them about that. What's that mean?
My nephrologist, who had been seeing me for several years since I pretty much got diagnosed, was following me, and I was trying to do sports and a lot of things in school, and I was too busy to take a blood pressure pill, and I just didn't remember. It wasn't ingrained in me yet, and so I would leave, and then I would go get my checkups, and my blood pressure was through the roof. My doctor was like, "What's going on? Are you taking your meds?" They would, look, okay, you got 30 pills. You take one pill a day. You got your prescription filled 30 days ago. You should be out of pills. How many do you have? I have 20. Okay, that math doesn't add up. You're not
Yeah.
taking your pills. And I go,
Yeah.
well, I'm taking them, I think. Well, no, the amount of pills you have and your results from your blood pressure say differently. And he got tired of that over, several months. And after 6 months, we got a letter, and he was like, I can no longer be your nephrologist. And the nephrologist was attached to my primary care physician, and they both went together. I had to find a new primary care physician because that particular PCP referred to that nephrologist.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
huge debacle for my parents. I had to find somebody else. I ended up with a doctor that wasn't as good as the one that I had, and it was disappointment all the way around. Fortunately for me, 2-3 years later, when I did get back on dialysis, my first nephrologist was one of the rotating doctors that came in and did the chair visits for people. And so I saw him again. I said, Doc, I take my pills now. I'm sorry. you know I've grown so much in 3 years. I'm not 16 anymore. I'm 19. I'm a man, which is it's 3 years is a long lifespan, a long time when you're that young. But, I learned my lesson, and then I understood you got to listen to these guys because they don't want to treat people that won't listen. It's futile.
Yes.
You know,
And it's busy. They're busy.
they are.
Nephrologists, there's not enough of them in the country. So when you have one that's good, you need to embrace him or her. You need to really make sure you're staying with it. Another thing that happens here, it just came to mind, was some people, especially with blood pressure, they get fine. Their blood pressure is fine. They don't have to take the medicine, and they just skip it, or they just decide, well, it's better. And then all of a sudden, and they're off of it for 4 or 5 days, and they got a 200 over 100. Because your kidney function regulates your blood pressure. So if your kidney function is poor, even with the transplanted kidney, if you stop taking your medicines, it's going to go up with a vengeance. So don't stop the blood pressure medicines. You got
Not at
to
all.
talk
And
ever without
I
doctor
hear,
talking.
I've heard about people doing that with their transplant meds.
Oh
They get the
yeah,
transplant, they feel so much better. They're not
yeah,
on dialysis, they feel great, and they stop taking the very medicine that's keeping them alive.
exactly,
They start to
exactly.
deteriorate, their labs go crazy, and they reject. And they're like, "But I got a transplant. I'm normal again." You're normal with some footnotes to it, you know?
Yeah, you've got the quote of the day. I'm feeling better, so I don't need anything. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, you're back in the emergency room and you're going, they said, well, have you been taking your pills? Well, no, I was feeling fine. And
Yeah.
it happens. I've had people actually tell me that in the emergency room,
You know,
in the
and
clinic.
there's lots of times I get up in the morning and I look at those 18 pills in
Yeah.
that container and I go, wow. And so I'm medicine dependent now.
Sure.
But before I was what they called electric dependent. When we have, weather like we're having now, where I've had a couple flickers in my power already, where the demand on the power grid has been great. I already got an email from the electric company saying, hey, try to keep it down a little bit because everybody is cranking their heat when it's 19 degrees outside. But when power goes out, especially at dialysis, you're just done. It's
Oh,
over.
absolutely.
And with all the talk about power grids failing or future, I kept my ear attuned to those things because where do we go when the power goes out?
Right.
And there's 500 other dialysis patients that show up also, and so we got labeled as being electric or energy dependent, no different than anybody that's on heart pumps and such.
Great. Yeah. LVACs. Yeah. LVADs. You know, this has been great. I I would love to have a tag team of a couple other people I've got in mind, 3 or 4 of us to get together and have this kind of discussion and
Yeah,
speak specifically about what we're doing and why we are where we're at. I'm 33 years out with my brother's kidney. Okay, I didn't do it, but 2 days of dialysis. But I can tell you that having this transplant has not only been great for me, but it's been work. It's been a job. It's like a secondary job to me. You have to focus on it. You have to constantly be thinking about what will this do to my kidney function. If you don't, you're in real big trouble. So consequently, I give you 10 seconds. No, I give you whatever time you need to give me an idea. Tell the folks what it is that's most important to you right now. What you think they should be doing, whether they're looking for a kidney or if they're been transplanted. What's your takeaway piece here right now?
I think knowledge is the big key. Knowledge about yourself, knowledge about what is happening to you, and knowledge about your illness. The more you know about yourself, the more you can help doctors diagnose to make you feel better. Understanding, and you have to be honest with them on everything, no matter how embarrassing it is, no matter, whatever it is that you feel, you've got to tell them everything that's going on with you so that you can properly diagnose. And it's all for the benefit. They're here to try to help you. And so, that's what you have to do is just be honest with your doctors, stay positive, stay, vigilant, and yeah, just, be determined, you're the most valuable asset that you have.
That's exactly right. Well, I'm gonna have to say goodbye. I don't like it, but I got your phone number, so I can text and email you anytime I want to, and that goes
Yes, sir.
vice versa. And I just want to thank you for coming on. It's been very special to me, and I think the listeners are going to really appreciate this time. And
I appreciate you having me, and thank you for letting me speak a little bit about myself.
it's great. Okay, if you're listening out there, you get a chance. Just want to ask you to make sure you pay attention closely to what's been said, and remember for sure that this is individual stuff. You're an individual, we're all individuals, and so that we have a different treatment plan, and there are several options for you. If you don't get an option, uh, you got to ask for one. What are my options? And if you don't ask, no one's going to ask for you. And if you ask and you don't get an answer, then you need to find some place where you can get the answer. You just don't go blindly into the dark. Make sure that you understand everything that's been put before you and what are my options. So, until we can talk again, and it'll be soon, keep breathing.